Hey YouTube, Dr. Richard Lai here with Study Acupuncture with me. I hope this video helps you study for the acupuncture board exam. If you like the video, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos coming up. If you have any special requests for an acupuncture point that you want me to review, drop a comment below. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Hey everybody, welcome to Study Acupuncture with me. I'm Richard Lai, Doctor of Physical Therapy and acupuncturist. A little bit about myself, I teach at the Eastern School of Acupuncture. I also have my own private practice for acupuncture, and I work full-time as the Director of Education and Development for a healthcare company. And when I teach, I get this common question. Why can that point do that? Why can that point do that? And it's easy to answer that question when it comes to muscles and their, because of their origins, their insertions, why can the bicep flex the elbow? Easy. Or if someone asks about like glucose in the blood, what makes it go up? What makes it go down? Why can the blood glucose levels change? Those are simple, right? Because it's anatomy and physiology. It's just physiological functions. So this video, I'm going to attempt to explain the functions of the organ, the functions of the channel, and relate that to why the point can do what it does. So without further ado, why can lung 7 do that? So what can lung 7 do? First, let's talk about what can lung 7 do. Lung 7 can release the exterior and expel wind. It can promote the descending function of the lung. It can pacify wind and phlegm. It can benefit the head and the nape. And it can open and regulate the conception vessel. Now I know there's some more functions, but these are the more primary ones, and I'm going to attempt to explain them. So the first one is release the exterior and expel wind. So lung 7, right, we know that it releases the exterior and it expels wind, meaning it treats wind disorders. In fact, it's actually a principal point to release the exterior and promote lung function. So the question is, why can it do that? And we have to think about the lung in terms of anatomy and physiology, right? The function of the lung is gas exchange, right? Oxygen is a gas that you need to live. And when you breathe in, you inspire, your lungs exchange that gas from the air and it oxygenates your blood, right? And that oxygenated blood then gets circulated throughout your entire body. And that supplies your tissues, your muscles, everything. So the lungs literally communicate with the exterior environment. So think about that with release the exterior. Now you have two lungs, right? Two lungs are connected to the trachea through the left and right bronchi, right? And below the lungs, you have this flat muscle. It's called the diaphragm. And around the lungs, you have a pleura. The pleura encloses the lung. You basically have pleura around all of your organs. It basically creates separation between your organs. And your lungs, you have a right lung and a left lung. The right lung, you have 3 lobes, right? The superior lobe, the middle lobe, and the inferior lobe. The left lung, you only have 2 lobes, literally just superior and inferior lobe. And the left lung, you also have this cool thing called the cardiac notch. It's basically just a space for the heart. So that's the anatomy of the lung. Now let's talk about the relationship between the lungs and the skin. So there's a relationship between the lungs and the skin. Your skin is your body's largest organ, right? And the skin is actually open to being attacked by exterior pathogens. Remember, there's 6 exterior pathogenic factors, right? There's wind, cold, heat, dampness, dryness, and fire. So there's 2 important functions of the lung to know here, which is it controls the diffusing and descending of qi and body fluids. And it controls the skin and the space between the skin and the muscles. So the lung diffuses, right? It diffuses. In other words, it spreads. What does it spread? It spreads defensive qi and body fluids all over the body, especially to the space between the skin and the muscles. That area is known as the toe li. So what is wei qi? Wei qi is defensive qi, right? And it does just as it's named. It defends your body from those 6 exterior pathogenic factors. So if your lung qi is weak, right? If your lung qi is weak, then your defensive qi, your wei qi, it might not be fully up and it might not be fully protecting you, which during this pandemic is super necessary. So the lungs control the skin and the space between the skin and the muscles. We talked about it descends and it diffuses, right? So the lungs receive fluids and it spreads them, or it diffuses them all over the body, especially to the space between the skin and the muscles. So if your lung is nice and nourished, then your skin will be nice and silky smooth. Your pores will be operating normally, and your resistance to the pathogenic factors is also going to be strong. But the thing is, if your lung qi is weak, or if your lung qi is compromised, then your defensive qi, your wei qi, is actually going to be compromised also. And also your skin is going to be compromised, right? Your skin might be dry, it might be sweating awkwardly, right? And then you'll be more prone to those exterior pathogenic factors. So these two functions specifically allow lung 7 to release the exterior. In other words, release that pathogenic factor, which is in the exterior of the body. Especially it expels what? It expels wind, right? Which specifically attacks the exterior of the body. So in this way, the lung, right, lung 7, can clear the wind out of the body. So these functions allow that to happen. The next function is promote the descending function of the lung. Promote the descending function of the lung. So think about where the lungs are. The lungs are the topmost organ, right, in the chest cavity. So since they're physically at the top, the qi then descends, right? You've heard the phrase, the descending of qi. So the lungs descend qi, it descends and it disperses qi and body fluids. Now, where does it go? What does it take? The kidneys actually grasp and hold that qi. Now, that's the function, right? Promotes a descending function of the lung. So what's the opposite if that function is impaired? So what does it look like in your patient if that function of descending is impaired? So if lung qi is supposed to go down and it's impaired, that means the lung qi isn't flowing down, it's gonna congest in the chest and the lungs. Your patient then may cough, your patient may be short of breath, your patient may feel just, stuffy and congested in the chest, right? So the lung 7, it will promote the descending function of the lung. Another thing the lungs do is it sends fluid, right? Sends that fluid. Where one place it goes, it sends fluid down to the bladder. Once it goes to the bladder, it becomes urine and it gets excreted there, right? So if your patient has some urinary issues, there's a chance that the root cause could be something lung related. That's just a little sidebar. So now next function is pacifies wind and phlegm. So lungs control the diffusing and descending of qi and body fluids. So if the lung is compromised, the descending function of the lung is compromised and impaired, then there's gonna be this congestion of fluid or phlegm in the chest. So like I said before, your patient would have cough, shortness of breath, maybe even have like saliva coming up that's like foamy in the back of the throat, right? Like that foamy saliva. In the board exams and a lot of questions, they like to say vomit foamy saliva, right? It just means you have like this white spittle foam coming up. So that's a sign of the descending function being impaired, the congestion of fluid, which translates to congestion of phlegm in the chest. So lung 7 would combat that by pacifying the wind and pacifying that phlegm. Now, number 4 function is benefiting the head and the nape. So this is an interesting one, right? Why does it benefit the head and the nape, right? How does lung 7 treat the head and the nape, which means the back of the neck, basically? So when you study the lung channel, right? It doesn't even go up past the neck, right? It doesn't even go past the shoulder, right? It literally just goes to that chest shoulder area. So, a lot of times it's like, what are you talking about? How does it benefit the head and the nape of the neck? So it's important to mention here that the lung 7 is the luo point, right? And you can actually check out my podcast, episode number 6. I talk about lull points in depth there. Just search for it, Study Acupuncture with me, on any of your podcasts. So in a nutshell, lung 7 is a lull point, and the lull connects interior and exterior channels, or it connects your yin-yang pairs. So here, lung connects to large intestine. And you can actually use lung 7 to connect or use the related channel. You can use lung 7 to treat the large intestine channel. You can use lung 7 to treat the related channel. So look at the large intestine channel. Where does the large intestine channel go? It goes up well into the head. So you can use lung 7 to treat the head and the nape of the neck. Lung 7 is also categorized as a command point. What's a command point? A command point is basically specific points that have this super strong influence, a command over a specific area, right? They command a specific area. So you have 4 command points. Well, I mean, you have 6 command points if you count PC6 and do 26. So you have stomach 36, you got lung 7, you got UB40, you got LI4, right? Stomach 36 is the abdomen, lung 7 is the head and the back of the neck, definition. UB40 is the command point of the entire back, and then LI4 is the command point of the face and mouth. And then the 2 extra ones that I mentioned are PC6 and DO26. PC6 is the command point of the chest, and DO26 is the command point for resuscitation. So if you look at this table, right, this table explains why number 5 opens and regulates the conception vessel, right? I pulled this table from the Big Picture, great resource. You can just Google Big Picture acupuncture, you'll get this one as well. So lung 7 is the opening point or the master point of the conception vessel. So when you use lung 7, right, you activate and you open that flow of qi in the conception vessel, which is also known as the Ren channel. So this will affect all things conception vessel. Conception vessel treats genital issues, urinary issues, uterus issues, and you can also see there's like this range of action, which is the abdomen, chest, lungs, throat, and face. And if you look up where the Ren channel goes, those are the areas where the Ren channel actually goes. So now let's recap, right? So we talked about the 5 functions of lung 7: release the exterior, expel wind, promote the descending function of the lung, pacify wind, benefit the head and the nape, open and regulate the conception vessel. So key takeaways, right? Obviously, really important is lung 7 is good in wind conditions, especially in wind cold, right? Wind tends to combine with other pathogenic factors, especially heat and cold. So it's really important for you to differentiate, to be able to do differential diagnosis and differentiate between wind heat and wind cold, right? Just basically wind cold, what are you going to look for? You're going to look for that pulse, right? That pulse is a very clear indicator. Floating type pulse, you got wind, you got cold. Whereas wind heat, you got a floating pulse, meaning the wind, and then you may have a rapid pulse. There's other factors that you can look at, other symptoms that you can look at, but those are some of the key ones. And obviously, you would also have cold symptoms and heat symptoms, etc. The Ren opening point, right? It's the Ren opening point, lung 7, or the conception vessel master point, whatever terminology that you want to use. Key takeaway is also lung 7 is a command point of the head and the neck, right? We talked about that command points are points that have this super major influence or command of a certain area of the body. And then regulating the water passageways, right? The lungs have this function of descending and dispersing qi and body fluid. So if it's impaired, the water won't descend down, it won't disperse down. So then what are you left with? You're left with a patient with congestion in the chest. And actually, I should also mention edema here, right? So edema is an interesting symptom, right? There's a lung pattern called invasion of the lungs by wind water. And with this pattern, you have the sudden swelling of the face, right? Because of this wind-cold invasion. This wind-cold invades the body with dampness. So this invasion actually complicates the lungs function, right, of descending. So the patient's all discombobulated. So then what will happen? The edema occurs because it's not descending and the lungs aren't descending and dispersing that chi and body fluid. So there's facial edema, right? So lung 7 is a key point for facial edema. On your test, you may see it as yang edema, which is that facial edema. And then lastly, obviously, right, this is an acupuncture point, so it alleviates pain. Acupuncture points, they course the channel, right? It moves chi. So lung 7 would have basically an effect anywhere along the channel. Or in this case, it can even affect the large intestine channel. So if your patient has like shoulder pain or hand pain, or whatever pain that lung and large intestine channel touches, you can use lung 7 for that as well. So that concludes today's video on why can lung 7 do that? Again, I'm Dr. Richard Lai. That was a lot of fun to kind of just talk about a little bit. And if you found it helpful, if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video. And even beyond that, share this video with your classmate if you think they're going to find it helpful, right? Remember, we're all in this together. Let's help each other study. And until next time, God bless and happy studying.